Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Reasonably Effective Podcast. I'm Tom Tice, as always, joined by Uncommon Fossil.
Well, glad to be here today.
And today we are talking about, of course, Pokemon cards, and specifically not any Pokemon cards, but the actual Pokemon here, as opposed to, all of the top cards in the game are trainers and stuff like that. But today we're taking a look at the top 10 best Pokemon in Standard right now, and we each made a list, and I just quickly will mention before we hop into things that they are grouping together, I guess, evolution lines, which, like, for example, Dragapult EX with Drakkloak, and also something like, say, Lunatone with Solrock, that would be grouped together. So we'll, explain that more, I guess, as we get there. But yeah, I guess now let's open up. We've seen our own, obviously, but we haven't seen each other. So let's open up each other's and see what we think about them.
Okay, so now I have to try to open this up properly.
Yep, and unsurprisingly, I see. Wait, okay, so they are very similar. In fact, I will quickly say here that the 10 you have are the 10 I had. Except for there's one that I was like, this one I think is a little more out there, which is actually my number 10, which isn't on yours. And the other 10 are the same, which is interesting to see. But we do have them ranked differently, which I think is interesting. That's going to be the more interesting conversation there. And
yeah.
Yeah.
So let me say I do have 4 honorable mentions, which are none of yours, by the way, including not Froslass. So I have Mega Kangaskhan EX, which is very good.
Yep.
Obviously, if you pair it with Latias, I have Lilith Clefairy EX, which is very good. Obviously, it's a counter to a very good card. The Mega Lucario EX, which would be that's the next closest main attacker, and then the Enzorark, which is a good engine as well as an interesting attacking option. So those to me are some pretty good cards just outside the top 10.
Yeah, I generally agree with this. I personally don't think Mega Lucario EX is super good, though obviously as a deck it is pretty good. But ultimately it's like, it is a good deck, and it is a meat attacker of a good deck there. But I guess with that one, I do think Lunatone kind of carries that a bit more, as well as some, like, say, the items around it. But I guess those items kind of get grouped in with Mega Lucario as well. I don't know if that was your thought process, but it isn't on your top 10 either, actually, so.
Yeah, no, I think, that's kind of was my thought process there, I would say.
Yeah, but then we have, as I said, we have, like, very similar cards, and I think we'll go, should we work top down, or do you want to work bottom up?
Let's do top down, because some of those are the quicker ones, but discussion-wise where we're in agreement, some are not. I'm going to say for me, I thought the top 4 cards were clearly, to me, the top 4 cards. You have one included that I don't. And then the placement in the top 4 was a little bit trickier for me. Actually, no, I guess you have 2 in. So obviously, part of it is your number 1 is Dragapult EX. That's much lower on me. It's number 8. So so I lean towards versatility. Because obviously the tricky part with Dragapult is it is a deck and it works great. It's the best deck in format by far, but it's only one deck, so therefore, how do we do it? And then the other question, which comes up to me, is obviously you have the Drakkloak here in your image as well. I kind of would include the Drakkloak, even though it's not in the image. But then it is kind of it's 2 cards, though, so therefore, to me, I give it a little bit of a penalty, the fact that it's not just one card, but it's a combo of cards that are necessary. Drakkloak's not just a pre-evolution, but it's a super great pre-evolution.
Yeah, I do see where you're coming from that, where the fact that you, obviously, they help each other, right, in the rankings, but it's not like Dragapult EX has Recon Directive on it. It is 2 separate cards, so you do need both of those there. I will mention, though, so there's a few things that have multiple cards with them. You didn't show that on yours. I did. There was Froslass, which I'll talk about, which I have there. But then there is Dusknoir with Dusclops. I'd say that's a bit, like, that's probably the least important of the other parts of them. But then obviously Lunatone and Solrock, which you have actually even higher than I have it. And that one does literally need the other piece. The 2 cards are essentially useless. When I say essentially useless, like they're useless without each other, right? Even more so than Dragapult EX with Drakkloak. They're both basics, right? Yes. But they are they need each other.
Yeah. Right, yes. The Lunatone's ability doesn't trigger without Solrock, and Solrock can't attack without Lunatone. So either one by itself is essentially a pointless card. for
Yeah.
sure.
But we'll get to that in a second. But I guess let's start with your top one, which is Fezandipiti EX, and I'll have some
Yep.
stuff to add after, I think, because I am pretty high on that card, but obviously I don't have it at the top slot there. But obviously it's a very good card.
Yeah, I mean the pro, and I do have a one to me a big con, which I'll say the last part. But look, it's a super awesome card. It's been one of the best cards in format since it came out. Right, you draw 3 cards as long as when your Pokemon's knocked out. You're going to get knocked out multiple times as long as as long as you're not playing a mega deck. You're going to get knocked out multiple times over multiple turns, right? Unless they're taking multiple knockouts at one time, which can happen. But for the most part, you can use it 2-3 times in a game pretty commonly. That's very good. It saves you from getting put down to a small hand size. Now, Iono's out of the game, so that's a little less of an issue. But Unfair Stamp, I think, is up in its plays and decks that are leaning on that. Right, I think that's the main ace spec over Prime Catcher these days. So having the Fezandipiti, you get knocked out, boom, you get down to like a 2-card hand, and it's a tough spot to be. So Fezandipiti digs you out of that hole. So it's super awesome. The retreat cost is 1, which is a good thing for it as well. 210 HP is for a support Pokemon is a solid number. There's other support Pokemon in these top 10 lists of both of us. Some that do have 210 as well, but when you get the 210 number, that's a good thing. Unlike something like Meowth EX, which is lower. The attack is not bad. It very rarely gets used, but it can hit the bench, which is good. But just having that very simple quote engine piece, it's not exactly an engine, but is super awesome. The big negative to me, but it wasn't enough of a negative to take it down for the top spot, is it's a reactive card rather than a proactive card. It doesn't help you set up early on. It helps you. It only works after you've been knocked out. So that is a big downside to the card, but it's just been such a universal card. I think even in our post-rotation world, it's still just a super universal card. It's a staple in almost every deck. So to me, it just seems fitting that it is the top deck, the top card, right, in the standard format right now.
Yeah, I was definitely considering. So when I first made the list, I was like, oh yeah, Fezandipiti EX is the best. And then I kind of thought about it some more, and I was like, I actually haven't been playing this card as much as I was expecting to play at post rotation,
Okay.
which is I'm still playing it some, but I'm not playing it
Yeah.
as a in every deck, which has kind of surprised me because as you're saying, it is reactive. Also, honestly, the main thing is that it is this 2 prize liability that your opponent is able to just really, really target down a lot of the time. I will say,
Yeah.
We each have Budew pretty high. Budew is definitely a pretty important card, and as you're saying with Dragapult, it is the most played deck, and that deck's going to be playing probably a little slower. You're going to see a lot of decks going for some maybe big swingy turns, or decks where once you're ahead on tempo, you just kind of carry that, or I guess just ahead in the prize race, you just carry that to the end. And I guess their Fezandipiti EX will be good. But ultimately, I found myself not using it quite as much as I was expecting, and same thing with other people. But it is very good. But again, it can be a liability, and well, I guess it kind of depends what you're playing, right? If you're playing decks, as you said, there's a handful of other 210 HP powerful support basics that are 2 prizes there. There's Meowth EX, which is
Yeah.
also weak to fighting, and even lower HP, and you have Kangaskhan EX also weak to fighting, which is tankier, but if you're weak there, it can be still pretty bad, right? So
Yeah.
ultimately, it's not some huge liability, but I do think there are times when it feels a little more mediocre than maybe it did in previous times, as well as I guess one big reason is that it's hard to search without Nest Ball. So you're going to see
Yeah.
the 3 Pokemon search options in terms of items being previously it was I'd say Nest Ball, Budew, Poffin, and Ultra Ball, but Nest Ball has been replaced by Pokepad, which doesn't search for Fezandipiti EX. So if you're relying on this all the time, and because it is a bit of a liability, so you want to avoid finding it until you actually need it, then at that point you'll have to struggle a little more to find it, both because you have to maybe discard some cards, you have less outs, and Ultra Ball is useful, and one of the only ways to find some of the other cards as well there. But it is very good. I mean, I have it as the 3rd card and was considering it higher, so it is very good.
Yeah, in terms of the Pokemon Search and Lost and Nest Ball, yes, well, first, that's a big deal. And I imagine we'll get some basic Pokemon search card like Quick Ball, Nest Ball coming down the road at some point this year. I could be wrong. That's my thought. But one thing I'm using much more I would expect to use it more, but I'm using it more than I thought, is supporters for Pokemon Search. Because there's different options to get basics and evolutions and different combinations. So pretty much all the decks I'm playing have those, and I don't mind using that in a turn, and so therefore that's a way to get the Fezandipiti into play. And of course, if you use that supporter to get, say, Meowth EX, which we're going to be talking about at some point, then you burned your supporter for turns. So then the Meowth EX is essentially a useless card, but getting the Fezandipiti, some other Pokemon, and then getting the 3 cards does work out. So, and the other thing, yes, it's a 2 prize liability, but it's still a support Pokemon you can use turn after turn, whereas Meowth EX, it's an on-playability. Boom, then it strictly is a liability, right? Fezandipiti still has value. Plus, and if you have your attacking Pokemon powered up, say if you're playing Dragapult EX, you got your Dragapult all set, evolved and attacking, they gust up the Fezandipiti. Well, you know what? I'm just going to set up my Dragapult and smack you again with that. So, bossing up the Fezandipiti, yes, if it's 2 prizes for a game is good, but in the middle of the game, it's not always very effective strategy.
Yeah, that is true. Ultimately, I think we're kind of splitting hairs here as well because this card is very good, and definitely one of the better Pokemon in the format. I guess let's look at my top card here next, which again, as we said, or I don't know if we actually said it if you're just listening, but it is Dragapult EX with Drakkloak there. And Dragapult EX, obviously, best deck in the game. I don't think there's too much debate. I think there's some debate over exactly how good it is. But of course, what it does here, you have your attack Phantom Dive, which is good for Fire Psychic doing 206 damage counters on opponent's bench in a wheel like, which isn't super counterable there. There's the Stadium Battle Cage, which does see some play, but that just stops the damage counters, and you can bump it as well, right? So, and then you also have the Draco here, which is also very, very important with the Recon Directive, letting you once every turn for each Draco you have. You can just Draco, select the top 2 cards, put one to your hand, put the other on the bottom of your deck. So, ultimately, Drakkloak is a card that I think really, I don't know if I've underestimated, but the more I played with it, the more I realized, like, yeah, this is really good. You're kind of talking about Fezandipiti EX being this engine that is, it like is really good, but is reactive. Drakkloak isn't reactive. You can use it as soon as you get it. It sees less cards and draws even less. It sees 2, gets 1, unlike Fezandipiti, which sees 3 and gets all 3 there. But also you can use this in like these longer games, and I think Drakkloak really lends itself to slowing the game down a little bit and just having these like games where you say sit behind Budew or your opponent Budews, and you can still draw cards and get value there. And I think it's a card that it is, in terms of like a true engine, it really works well, or really works all right and works consistently. Unlike, say, we both have Noctowl kind of on here. Mine's an honorable mention. Something like, say, even the Dunsparce, that one, definitely a bit weaker there. But those are kind of sketchy. Even with, say, Lunatone, you need the fighting energy for longer and more drawn-out games where, say, under item lock, that can be difficult to do. And then there's Enzoric EX, but that's a 2-prizer. And Enzoric EX's attacker is worse than Dragapult EX. Obviously, it is contained in one card there, and neither of us have Enzoric EX on our list. But I feel like the draw makes the deck feel, or any deck playing it, feel stable. And I think Drakkloak and Dragapult EX, you're kind of saying they're only played together, but I think that's because they are both so strong, and obviously they're played a lot, and they're played in a wide variety of not necessarily different decks because they're all Dragapult decks in some ways, but they're played in so many different builds, and it is a pretty versatile card. You're talking about versatility, and I think it is a lot more versatile than most main attackers.
Yeah, look, it's true. It's really good. So, and let me talk about what's good. I would talk about Drakkloak for a second. As you mentioned before, we have Buddy Buddy Pop, which gets the basic. Also, that benefits Dragapult, obviously, as well as Drakkloak. And then you have the Poke Pad that gets the Drakkloak as well. So it's easier. So you can get that into play easier, which is a plus. In terms of the engine, yes, you see 2, 1 in hands. not bad. That's actually pretty good. And you can do it more than once, right? And because of Buddy Buddy Poffin and Pokepad, you can get a couple Drakkloaks set up a lot of times. So then you get two. Now you're seeing four cards. You get two. That's really better than just drawing three cards most of the time. So that's very good. And it's a single prize, and it becomes Pokemon. It becomes your attacker. So that's all very good for sure. Drakkloak's not a quite a good enough of engine that I don't think it really gets used on its own. I remember like at times there have been a few decks that kind of used it as an engine, but not too much. I do think the Dunsparce for a single prize engine that we don't have is very good as well, better than Drakkloak. It's a little different, but obviously it's as an engine getting those three cards from the single prize. I like it. I think I like it more than you do. The couple points why I have Dragapult, I have it a lot lower than you, right? I have it at number 8. You have it at number 1. So that's a huge split. First, it is more limited to a deck, the best deck, the most played deck for sure. I think there's some more, I like the universal cards more. And then the other thing is, to me, because the Dragapult, if Drakkloak was just didn't have that ability, Dragapult wouldn't be as good as it is, right? It wouldn't be S tier probably. It would be A tier, I would think, but not S tier. So then it'd be fighting to be in the it might make your top 10, it may or may not. So without Drakkloak, Dragapult's worse. So I penalized it somewhat, which also to me keeps it out of being near at the very top end of the top 10 because it needs Drakkloak, which to me hurts a little bit in my eyes.
Yeah, I do see that. I think, definitely there are times when that like is more clear in games as well. You'll end up finding like Drakkloak for a while and then not finding like your Dragapult, or like find Dragapult and not a Drakkloak, which is probably even worse. Or maybe you're just like rare candying past it or something. And then you're definitely feeling that being like missing a piece of the puzzle, right? But they aren't super committal, really, like in particular. I mean, especially with like Drakkloak is just talking about Budew Poffin and Pokepad. It's kind of like the opposite thing of with Fezandipiti EX. It's so easy to get into play and kind of slow the game down a little to get really solid value out of it. Admittedly, you need to slow the game down, and there's only so much you can do to slow the game down. We will talk about Budew very soon, but with that card, your opponent might be able to just like kind of get past it at times. There are times when that just happens, and then you're just like, oh well, that's unfortunate. But ultimately, it's still you could get like a big advantage, and I do think it is. I mean, comparing it to Dunsparce, I guess I don't know. This shouldn't be just bashing on Dunsparce, but Dunsparce is as an engine, it can be explosive, but also it doesn't do. It's not the most consistent engine, right? Because you need to put resources into it consistently, which is kind of not what you want for your engine. If it's like a true engine, there.
No, I know which is why the Dunsparce isn't on my top 10. It didn't make honorable mentions. If I was doing a top 20, I think it may have find it in my top 20. It probably wouldn't in yours. Look, the Dunsparce works. You have to commit to it. It works. It works differently than other engines, I will say. So, and anyway, for me, I would have Dragapult. At one point, it was the fifth card on my list. I don't ever think I had it higher than fifth, though. Like I said, I think to me, the top 4 to me are the top 4 cards. Obviously, you're not in agreement with that either, but that I kind of had 4 cards, and I thought it certainly outside of that. That was kind of my thought. Maybe 5 or so. I definitely would not have put a top, which I certainly didn't do. But I get the argument for it. It is the best deck and format, and once you include the Drakkloak's ability, it can you can certainly make the argument. It depends on how you want to look at things through what lens, I think.
Yeah. But then I think we need to talk. I've been talking a lot about my number 2 card here, which is Budew. You have it at 4. We both think it's quite good here. Obviously, with Pollen being the probably most infamous attack in the game right now, being a free attack that also a Pokemon with free retreat. I think by far the best Pokemon with free retreat, unless I'm forgetting something. I mean, none of these here have free retreat. I guess Latias EX, it kind of has free retreat. But anyways, so Budew here, obviously that free attack doing 10, not very much, and 30 HP, which is obviously not very good. However, it does have the attack, which it item locks. So your opponent can't play any items, which is very important for setting up playing items. So it's kind of rough, right? And it's a very, very good attack here, and card that I think is it's just a very good Pokemon. It's pretty versatile. Theoretically, you could toss it in every deck. It doesn't belong in every deck, but it is very good in a lot of decks, and I think has legitimately changed the landscape of the game in a way that is like you mentioned supporters that search out Pokemon and those being played, and I think a big part of that is due to Budew and just in general. Honestly, I think there are a lot of people who just aren't playing a lot of supporters because the supporters are weaker post rotation, and then just suffering to Budew, and that's it. So, yeah, the card is really really good in slowing your opponent down. It doesn't always slow them down, which is the downside. I mentioned earlier that like sometimes your opponent will get something set up. It doesn't even need to be something very good. It could be like I guess a Riolu can't attack back-to-back turns, but it can knock out Budew, and then they get like a Mega Lucario, which is not that much setup. Probably something they could do under Budew, and at that point, then if you just keep Bedewing them, you're just falling behind, and it's a little hard to come back. But it's still super disruptive and can just completely shut your opponent out of the game. Well, you just set up, behind something like say Drakkloak or also Froslass, which I do have here. And yeah, ultimately, I think it is just it's so annoying in a way that a lot of decks can't. Like a lot of decks can deal with maybe, but it kind of just depends on what you draw, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a debate with a separate question, which we're not is not today's topic, but whether Budew is good for the game or not, right? It is one of the top cards, no doubt. I probably personally don't like it. I don't like playing against it, right? I don't know anybody does, so I probably mark it down for that. I initially had it even lower on my list, but then I was like, no, it definitely deserves to be there. I didn't think you're going to have it as high as 2, so surprised by that. I do think it's an excellent card. So, like I said, my top 4 were all potentially intermixable and to a certain extent. So Budew's certainly there. The downside, of course, like you have Dragapult 1. That's Dragapult knocks out a Budew if it's on the bench, does 200 damage to active, spreads through the damage counter, so it's a liability there. There's 2 types of decks right now. There's those decks that want to go first, which are a bigger percentage of decks than we've had for a while. I'm myself trying to figure out go with like some four Carmen decks with Meowth just to try to work with those type of decks. But then you have the other ones, because most decks are evolution decks, or you have decks that want to go second. Obviously, you get your support, a much more consistent setup turn, and then you're Bedewing and you're slowing your opponent down. So, like you said, Mega Lucario doesn't mind Budew too much. You can knock it out with like your Soul Rock attacking, and also you set up pretty easily. So, not having your item, you can often set up and then just take out the Budew, and your Mega Lucario is not getting one shot, so you're not in a terrible shot. But especially stage 2 decks are very, very difficult there. I've also been playing a decent amount of grass decks with TMS Ogerpon with some evolution lines. Budew's tough for that, although you're playing your own Budew in those decks typically, so the game's just kind of bogged down, which is the negative part. But it's a super, super powerful card, and yeah, deserves to be one of the top cards in the game for sure.
Yeah. Just, if you play the Pokemon DCG, then it's good. It definitely is. I will say it is one of those cards that can feel better or worse than it is. Like it definitely can lead to not swinging like really one-sided games, which isn't so fun. But definitely something that I do see from time to time. But then that can make it a little hard to judge. But ultimately, it is super good. We don't need to cover it too much. We've been covering a bunch of cards. Obviously, these top ones, I think there's the most to say about them. Maybe we're just going long, but yeah, it's very good. Then you want to talk about your number 2 card here, which I have also. I have that low. I have that at 8. Where we have Dragapult, which is Meowth the X here.
Right, Meowth the X, which so another one with a big split. Number 2 for me, number 8. So Meowth EX, really the best of the new cards here. Its ability, last ditch catch, right? You put it onto the bench and search your deck for supporter. Super awesome card there. It is a 2 prize liability at 170 HP, so that's not a good thing. It's weak to fighting, and obviously Fighting's a thing for sure, so that's a risk. Although Mega Lucario is kind of blowing up. Although Mega Lucario blows it up with its first attack now, so and accelerates energy, so that's bad. You in a lot of games you want to save it till you can get boss for game, but also but having that option to get your supporter early, and get your lilies and getting a new hand to set up is super important as well. So just it adds so much consistency to decks. It gives you the ability to win the game at the end with boss for game, which is obviously a big deal. And it also then just lets you get a supporter and set up early on. So it's very good. Obviously, searching for it, you really we only have Ultra Ball to search for it for the most part. So that's the downside to it. If a card like Quick Ball comes back, then a card like Meowth EX gets that much better. But it's getting a supporter. Supporters are the key cards to your deck engine. You're a bigger supporter person. I'm a little bit bigger item person. They both are super important. Not being able to play a supporter on a turn usually means you don't have a good turn. So Meowth EX is an awesome card. These type of cards we've had in the past, they've been very good. It's back. It's the tricky part with Meowth and where it fits is it's such a new card. None of us have played with it a lot. We haven't played against it a lot. So in today's format, today's meta with the EXs and stuff, how good is Meowth? It's still a little bit up in the air. But I think, super universal, super good card.
Yeah, it's definitely, as you're saying, it can lead to boss for game more consistently and a bunch of things. Again, it is kind of harder to search than you might like. And okay, I'm not gonna lie, I have not played this card very much. But it's not because not because I just haven't been playing, because I've been playing a lot, and I've been playing with a lot of different things, and I've tried out some. Yeah. I've included it in some decks, and I just never used it. Maybe I'm not used to the card, but I don't know. I just was expecting it to be something that I was going for a lot more, and it has not been that. It's been something that I've just kind of not been paying. Just I don't know. It just hasn't felt super necessary. Relating to the supporters thing, I guess I play more supporters. I don't like to have to rely on Meowth EX, because if you're relying on Meowth EX, a lot of the times you're relying on finding it with an item with the Ultra Ball there, and then if you're item locked, now you also can't set up with supporters, which is an issue now, because now you're making yourself more vulnerable. And I feel like the Pokemon is just very, I don't know, it can be really huge, right? But also starting it feels so bad. It's now the new worst Pokemon to start in the game, because it is a liability. It also, if you start it, you can't use it. Essentially, you could attack and then, but I don't know. It's so. It can be so good, but also relating to the support thing, that I kind of didn't finish that thought as well, that I play more supporters, so then I'm kind of getting a supporter most turns without Meowth EX. So I don't need that as much. And I think a lot of the tech support, I'm lower on that. I'm lower on I'm lower on Crispin. I haven't been I don't know. I guess, and honestly, a lot of these cards, I think the big difference is that a lot of my cards that I have higher up represent a bit more of a slower game plan, stuff like, say, Froslass, which I have on my list, which you don't, and Drakkloak and Dragapult EX being so high, Budew being higher, and Fezandipiti EX being lower, and things like that. I think I don't know. I think Meowth EX is the perfect representation of that, where Meowth EX is this very explosive card, kind of all in. I don't know if that's quite the right word for it, but something kind of like that, and that can be bad at times. It's not a bad card, though. I mean, it ultimately allows you to find crucial cards to win the game, either literally instantly win the game with boss's orders, or win the game, get into the game, right? Find a supportive setup or whatever. So it is a very powerful card, but I just don't think, I don't know. I mean, how much have you actually been have you been playing it have you been playing it close to Fezandipiti EX, or have you been
in terms of plays and games? No, it's down a lot. It's in most of my decks, but no. I mean, I play the other cards like Lunatone, Fezandipiti, Budew, all get played a lot more, but I do like having the Meowth in the deck. I think it's a big plus. Honestly, I think it's a good enough card. I've considered, and I'm still considering it, but I think it'd be a mistake, and that's putting a second Meowth in my deck because it's that good. I actually would think using it twice in a game would be good a lot of the time. The problem is, like you said, it's so bad when you start it. And at that point, if I put a second one in, I'm going to start it just way too much. Right now, it very rarely starts for me, which is good. But if I had two in, which I think it would have value within a lot of games, starting it so bad. So, but yes, I think having it, knowing it's an option, I just feel better, and I think the game flows better for me. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I guess I will also mention here that there are some decks. There are definitely some decks that run two Meowth EX decks that are playing like Mega Kangaskhan EX,
Okay.
probably Teal Ogerpon EX, Fezandipiti EX, and maybe that's it. Maybe I'm forgetting something. I don't know. And Meowth EX and like Cyrano and stuff. These like big basic toolbox decks. There's a handful of different ones. And there's also some like Rachel, I think like also does that, which is a little different. And I don't know. I just like don't really love it because don't know. I don't like search supporters. I mean, you got your search items, and then you need draw supporters. I feel like decks without draw supporters feel really scary. So ultimately, though, it's a very good card, right? It is a very good card. It is the
Yeah.
new or is the best new card here. And it is a card that I think we both need to learn more about. As I said, like, and you also have, as you have been saying, having a similar experience where you're having it in your decks but not playing it as much as some of these other cards,
Yeah.
but it is very powerful and can allow you to get bailed out of so many good situations or so many bad situations, which are now very playable situations with Meowth EX, which is really, really.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that's a good summary. And like I said, assuming we get another item to search for it, then Meowth jumps up, I think, higher for you. I would suspect it gets more playable at that point. The funny thing to me is you're the big supporter person, and Meowth gets you the supporter, but I value the Pokemon that gets the supporter more than you. It's just an
Yeah,
interesting
I think
thought
it's
dynamic there.
yeah, I think it's because I play more like supporters to have a more consistent feel as opposed to
Mhm.
like a card like Pokegear. I don't like that card because um I want to like already have the supporter, and part of this
Yeah,
the value of having supporters is that you're not vulnerable to item lock, and with something like obviously Pokegear, that's an item, and Meowth EX, then you're more vulnerable to more different things. Whereas I like supporters to be the backbone of the deck, and Meowth isn't the backbone of a deck; it's a supporting piece like Fezandipiti EX. If you
yeah,
put Fezandipiti EX into the role as the backbone of the deck, it's a little scary. With Meowth EX, I'd say that's even scarier there. But let's move on to the
yeah.
next card here, which is again kind of like two cards. You have it at three, I have it at four. This is one of the closest ones we have, which is Lunatone. Obviously, with Lunar Cycle, letting you discard a fighting from your hand to draw three. You can only use one Lunar Cycle each
Yeah.
turn. You can only use it if you have Solak in play, and of course, Solak you can only use if you have Lunatone in play. 70 for one, fighting on a basic. It doesn't hit weakness or resistance, which is good. Maybe I don't know. It depends, but ultimately, yeah, they're pretty good, right? It's a good engine. It is probably the best engine in the game, though. As I was kind of saying, you need to put
Yeah.
some resources into it, consistently. But it is, it's
Right.
all basics, and um, Solak's pretty good. I think Solak sometimes gets exaggerated because, like, if people say like Lunatone and Solak, Lunatone's definitely better. I mean, you don't have Solak on your image, but it is,
Right.
good draw. It is a little deck specific. I'd say honestly, I'd say Lunatone and Drakkloak are about as deck specific as each other, and then obviously then that leaves you comparing Dragapult EX to Solrock, where you know one of those is a bit better. So but anyways, yeah, the Lunatone Solrock engine is quite good and quite powerful, relatively versatile. It's not just played in like Mega Lucario, and yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I think Lunatone's the best engine in the game here. Certainly, if Lunatone didn't have the caveat on it that you have to have Solak in play, it would be probably too good for the game. So, yeah, and obviously, his energy is type specific. So it's a little more universal, though I think, than Dragapult in that right. It's commonly used with Goldengo EX,
Yeah, or it
or it was.
was.
It was, sorry. And it's used for Ceruledge, right? Which you always like to sing the praises of there. So it doesn't have to be a fighting deck that it gets paired with. It has to be a deck that wants energies, right, in it, or a fighting deck. So Also, and I'm playing live a lot mostly, which you play a decent amount of live too. And I'm always paying attention to the challenges. The challenge is either to play a grass Pokemon or a fighting Pokemon. And honestly, 75% of the time, it's a fighting Pokemon. In which case, it's gonna have Lunatone in the deck.
Um, yeah, it is. I mean, it is very good, and I'm not going to say here to deny
Yeah,
that. I mean, we have it in a very similar spot. A
yeah,
lot of these other ones we have not had in super similar spots, so we can kind of go in back and forth on that. But yeah, I
yeah,
mean, it's with the fighting stuff, I've always said this, that I think the fighting package is very good. I think the fighting Pokemon are not very good. Well, sorry, I think the fighting attackers, main attackers, are not very good, but Lunatone is so good. It's it is really really nice. Oh, also the other thing I was gonna say, we saw Radiant Greninja in the past being a very powerful card, a
yeah,
bit of a weird card, because it's like that's a one of, and lots of weird stuff going on in that card. But
yep.
ultimately, this is just kind of like Radiant Greninja. Again, it has some differences. It's not, it doesn't go in every deck because it is type specific, but it is arguably stronger than Radiant Greninja, and that card was like kind of broken. Certainly compared to the other Radiants, it was kind of broken.
Yeah, it was the best of the Radiants. Now, in defense of the fighting Pokemon, I do think Mega Lucario EX is a good fighting Pokemon. Obviously, it needs some of the boosting of the whatever the pro, right, that
Yeah,
gives it
Pure
the
and Power
30
Pro, yeah.
extra damage. But it's still very good. And the first attack, honestly, used that a lot when I played Mega Lucario to power stuff up, and it's relatively tanky. So there is at least that is a good fighting attacking Pokemon. Like I said, that was an honorable mention for me. It's well behind Dragapult, so it didn't make the list. But I do think we do have one. I think that's probably still the second best attacking Pokemon in the game, Mega Lucario. So there is at least one good fighting Pokemon out there.
Yeah. Maybe. I honestly think that
You
what's
don't
this?
agree?
Mega Lucario is not that much better than Okidogi. Not that I play either of them that much. And people obviously play Okidogi a lot. Or sorry, I mean, they play Mega Lucario a lot more than Okidogi. But
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, this isn't about those though, and we both, or it kind of is, but we both agree that Lunatone really is that thing. It is the piece of that. But anyways, so then
Yeah.
we have Latias EX, or I guess yeah, we'll go Latias EX. You have that at 5. I have it at 6. We got Latias EX and Ogerpon EX swapped, but
Right.
yeah, I mean you used to be a lot lower on this card. I want to hear your thoughts on it first.
Yeah, so I ranked it higher than you, even though you were the one that we're singing the praise of the Latias EX and saying it was like the greatest card ever printed when it
Not
came
quite
out.
that.
Not quite that, but it was the best card in the set, I think, for you.
Yeah,
And I don't
yeah.
I don't remember what else was in the set, so maybe
The
that
set
that
wasn't
was the
super good,
case.
or the set had a lot of decent stuff.
I've been playing more big basic decks lately. So I just been, it's a card I just didn't play for a long time, so I've just gotten more discovering the value of it lately. Obviously, free retreat is just really good. Gives versatility. Also, I don't have Mega Kangaskhan on my list, but that was honorable mention. That probably would have been my 11th card. That was close. That at times that wasn't my top 10, I'll say, and that was just draws you 2 cards, which is makes it a better engine piece than Fezandipiti. And if you're playing Latias EX in a big basic deck, then you have Mega Kangaskhan for some draw. So it's really good for something like that, but also just for any basic box style deck, really good. And even some decks with evolution Pokemon play it as well. So it's just a very, very good card. Having free retreat for basically all your Pokemon is super awesome. It's hurt now that we have Air Balloon, right? Because that is a very good tool card that gives free retreat for a lot of your Pokemon. But I am seeing a decent amount of jamming towers, so air balloons still not reliable all the time. And decks don't play a lot of switching items or supporters in them these days, I would say. So a lot of SEX, just very good card.
Yeah, it's very good. As you're saying, it gives a free retreat to most of your Pokemon. Turn 1, it gives free retreat to all your Pokemon. It's very, very good. And yeah, I mean, I don't think there's too much to say about it that hasn't already been said. Not that it's like broken. It's just good. It's good.
Yeah,
It's a searchable switch. And yeah, it's good. It is, as I said, I've talked about this with a bunch of Pokemon, a bit of reliability. It's not like a huge pain. Funnily enough, though, it actually is vulnerable to getting trapped in the active by like retreat locking. It's probably the most vulnerable Pokemon to it because you're having that as your answer. So then you're never thinking like how to get out of the active, because it is how you get out of the active. But not in that situation, especially with the loss of with Turos and Penny. But anyways, that's not very common. So then, yeah, I don't know. I feel like this card is honestly one of the simplest ones to talk about. But ultimately, you need some switching. This really simplifies it, which is super good.
Yeah, no, very very good card for sure. So, and like you said, if it gets trapped, you probably don't usually have the psychic energy in your deck. So, you
It was
really
shocking
just
amount do like Dragapult and then Dex playing Lotus Clefairy. Yeah,
that is true. So yeah, hopefully you can attack with it every other turn if you get stuck there. But yeah, so the other card which I had 6, you have 5, right? Is the Teal Ogerpon, which that's a card that I've been talking more about, singing the praises of. So I guess I'll put it to you, since you ranked it higher than me, even though I think I've been the bigger fan of it lately. What makes Teal Ogerpon so good?
yeah. I mean, it's honestly, I would say that Teal Ogerpon EX and Latias EX, those two cards are a lot in the theme decks. Not entirely, but Teal Ogerpon EX though, obviously you have Teal Dance, which is very good, letting you draw a card and accelerate energy to it. You accelerate the energy, and then you get to draw the card. You need to accelerate there. The draw is okay. The acceleration is fair, very good, especially with me being a little bit lower than others on Crispin. I really think that this is like a really really amazing way to get energies onto your board. Obviously allowing you to just go ahead and accelerate pretty pretty freely. There is kind of what I'd say. You can use multiple to get a bunch of energies on your board, but even if you just have one, doing that will allow you to just go ahead and you're going to be able to just get a bunch of energies on your board, and then you can move them around, or you can power up Teal Ogerpon EX to swing with. You hit weakness on a good Pokemon, probably the second best weakness behind Psychic. I think there's probably a big gap between that and third. And yeah, I mean, it just allows you to do a bunch of different things pretty well. The draw is good. The draw is not the reason that the card is good. If it just accelerated, it would be, I think, okay. But the draw helps out a bunch. It's a nice bonus there. And yeah, also with Meganium, I think. Okay, so regarding the Cubus Ogerpon EX deck with Meganium and Arboliva EX, I think Arboliva EX is real bad. I'm not gonna lie. So I think like the deck is an alright deck and only carried by Ogerpon and a little bit of Meganium there. I think Arboliva, every time I see it, I'm like, sometimes it does something, and I ask people in the comment section, they're like, yeah, sometimes you can do something with it, and like that's not like that's like yeah, sure, I guess. But a card that you can sometimes do something with, while put in a lot of resources, is not very impressive. And I played against it, and I have a loss to it. But usually it's because one, I misplayed, or two, they they like take a prize with it, which is like it's good to take a prize, but it also takes a prize for one energy is going to be like Soul Rock and stage 2. So, but anyways, yeah, I think Zero Ogerpon EX is good. It's pretty versatile. It's pretty powerful, especially with Meganium. It can like legitimately just do tons of damage. And there's a bunch of grass Pokemon that are all right, and Teal Ogerpon EX is like the heart of those. Oh, and there's also Raging Bull. I don't think Raging Bull. I guess Raging Bull's fine. I don't really. I see it some, but ultimately, yeah, obviously Teal Ogerpon EX is important there as well, and I'd say is the main driving factor of that deck as well.
Yeah, look, Teal Ogerpon is really fascinating, and that was part of why some of my thought process has been running lately. It's very good in itself. Its ability, like I said, is not a huge draw engine, because you're drawing one card, so you're hoping you get a couple Ogerpons in play. You're drawing 2 cards with that, but you also have to have the energies in hand beforehand. The big with the TMS Ogerpon, and that's been probably the deck I played. I played a lot. I don't play it the most, but it's of the decks I played a lot. It's probably my favorite deck. With the Arboliva, which I do like, I think it's a secondary attacker. It doesn't. It's more of it's an option, right, to clean up at the bench, or is what I'd say. It's not really the main attacker in the deck. But the Teal Ogerpon with the Meganium starts to do big damage there. Found that to be very successful. But also the deck then relies also on bug catching set. And even for a lot of these, which I will say though, because Budew is such a big thing, then if you can't have your bug catching set, you're probably not getting the energies, and you're not doing anything with Tiamat's Ogerpon. So it's vulnerable to Budew, the Tiamat's Ogerpon, just because then you can't get your energies consistently, because you're probably not playing like 15 energies in these decks, right? Because that's not a good thing usually.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Every time I play, like if I'm using Budew and I'm against Tiamat's Ogerpon EX, it always seems like they got their energy. And so yeah, but maybe that's just like luck. Then usually, chip away at the Ogerpon and then eventually kind of like get through it, but they end up pulling ahead on prizes. But anyways, yeah, I think the card. I mean, with this and Latias EX, we do them swap. We just have them swapped, and they're right next to each other as quite good Pokemon. Then we got, I guess I'll move to my number 7 Pokemon, which is Dusknoir here. Dusknoir, obviously paired with Dusclops, those are both important there, and letting you take extra prizes. It's not pulling you ahead on the prize race, really. In some ways, sometimes it's putting you behind, but it allows you to really hurt your opponent by removing their like previous evolution lines or something like that, which can kind of just win you games. It really needs to win you the game, not like instantly, but like put your opponent out of the game, because if it doesn't do that, then then you're probably just going to fall behind a prize and lose. But it ultimately can do that and can be really nasty. It also is the only card here that has a true counter to it. There's some like counters to Dragapult, and I guess some counters to like some like softer counters to some other cards. But Dusknoir with Psyduck there, and even Golduck, but like with Psyduck, you just put in the active. There isn't even any more Klefki for that counter. So that's like, that kind of sucks. But Dusknoir can be huge. Also with Telefast Psychic Energy, you can do some cool stuff there. Or not enough cool is the right word, but some powerful stuff there. And yeah, it can be really powerful, especially behind or paired with Budew. Yeah, it is very good. It's very good with Dragapult, but I don't think it's carried by Dragapult nor carries Dragapult. I think they are both good separately.
Yeah, I mean, Dusknoir obviously works with Dragapult. It works with other things as well. I have it lower than you, and I think at times I think it had it out of the top 10. I don't know that I ever had it much higher than 9th like I have it here. For me, it does get penalized somewhat because the stage 1 is in some ways the better card, right? I know I haven't been playing Dusknoir lately, but when I was playing it before rotation, so I would play more stage 1. Sometimes I'd only play the stage 1 as well, depending on the deck and the numbers, right? With what you're doing, are you playing rare candies or not, and such. So, but it's very good. We don't have Charizard, so EX, so therefore you don't get the damage there. The big thing is, because I have been playing a decent amount of Lucario EX, and with like a deck like that where you have Lucario, you also need a Lunatone, you need a Solrock in play. You're probably not getting more than 2 of the Lucarios in play. Yep, the one Lucario got the Riolo, whatever.
Yeah, Riolo.
In play. So honestly, I've just gotten games multiple times where I just can't attack for turns because they're wiping out my basics. So and I'm attacking with the Hariyama instead, which I hopefully got powered up, or just attacking with the Solrock, which isn't always good. So it's very disruptive against evolution decks, especially, which are most decks now. But there's some like Dragapult is not such a problem, I think, if you're playing Dragapult, because you're getting a bunch of Drakkloaks in play. But for a lot of evolution decks that don't have useful pre-evolutions, you don't want to put 3 pre-evolutions into play, because all of a sudden you've lost board space and you've lost your flexibility. So the Dusknoir can be a very disruptive card, I will say.
Yeah. I think it is. I think I maybe mentioned Budew being swingy, which it is, but this card is very swingy. It's either like super crazy good or doing a whole lot of nothing, like trading prizes evenly, except you're putting a bunch of resources in trade prizes evenly. So that's like not so good. But yeah, again, it can be really good. We have it ranked similarly. Then we're going to skip our number 8s because we did both of those with Meowth EX and Dragapult EX, and move on to, I guess. Oh wait. Oh no, sorry. I skipped it. I skipped Knockdown.
My number 7. Right. So I've knocked down number 7, which next to Tiamat's Ogerpon, which is because you need to have a Terra Pokemon. Probably the Tiamat's Ogerpon is the most common Terra around, I would think, to activate it. It's a basic, so, and obviously is a bit universal. I think Lunatone's the best engine, but you can make the argument for any deck that has Terras that Noctowl is the best engine in the game, right? Because remember, if you're playing back in the Inteleon engine with the Shady's dealings, you're getting either on the stage one, you'd get one trainer, or you'd get two trainers with the stage two Inteleon. Here it's two on the stage one that you search for, but you have to have the caveat is you already have to have a Terra in play. So I think it's a fair swap there, but it's less versatile than Inteleon because that worked for any deck. But still, searching for any two trainers is crazy awesome, right? Because now you don't have to worry about supporters, items. You get whatever you need, as well as stadiums and tools as well. So it's just super, super, super powerful. The downside is limited to what decks it can go in, but for the decks that can utilize it, I'd say it's probably the best search engine you can have if you have a deck that can activate it.
Yeah, it is really powerful. Again, as I've been saying about quite a few of these, hit by, I mean, you're not going to get Iono turn one, which is good, or turn two or whatever, but you are potentially going to get Budew, right? So then you can't get as much value off of these. Not that it's bad, it's like still decent, but it's more mediocre. You're not going to pull off quite as many explosive things, and you might struggle to find it as well if you like don't get your turn one fan rotom or whatever, or if they hit you with a judge, which obviously can happen, and judge is good. But then there's also the fact that it is pretty specific, or like somewhat deck specific, and you're ready to kind of be set up to make it work, which again, for an engine, the more requirements, the worse it is, because you want it to kind of be I don't know, it kind of depends. In some ways, you want to be the starting point for your deck, and if the starting point has a starting point before it, then that can be kind of sketchy there. But yeah, it can lead to some really, really powerful stuff. Honestly, I feel like this card's very good. I have it as 11. The reason I don't have it higher is because, I don't know, I just feel like I don't see it used, and I don't use it, and I don't know, like, it feels like it should be super good, but it's just, I don't know, like once you got your Terra and you got like your attacker, it feels like you kind of got your stuff, and then you're all right. You don't need Noctowl at that point, but it can be huge. I like the card, but I don't know, it's just not quite there. And Terra Box also didn't really. It's not like the decks that played it aren't really play either.
Right, I've been playing it in my Teal Mask Ogerpon deck.
What's the line?
I think it's a 2/2 line of Noctowl. Okay. It kind of like it, and I don't play the
Rotom.
The Rotom in that deck, so which is fine with that. But what happens, it kind of suffers a bit from like Meowth EX for me. I get the basic, I get the Hoot down early, and then I just don't, and then I just hold off on the Noctowl. It's like, okay, I'll save it for when I need it. And most games end with my never playing the Noctowl, I will say. But but then it's usually games like where I'm doing what I need to do, so it's okay. But it kind of suffers from it's an option, but I'm holding off on actually activating it, right? Of actually playing it down. So, but it's good, and of course it is searchable with Pokepads, so that's a big plus for Noctowl as well.
Yeah, it is a nice engine. Again, it is searchable for Pokepad. The Terra obviously is not. You do have Terra Orb if you want that though.
Right.
But yeah, it's decent there. Then we got my number 9 card, a card that I actually was considering moving down a spot right before this. That's Munkidori here. A card I don't know. I don't want to talk about Munkidori. You talk about Munkidori.
Which is again, this is a funny one because we have it very similar. I have it 10, you have it 9, close, but you're like the Munkidori hater, and you ranked it higher than me. So I find that very amusing. So which is why you don't want to talk about it, but it's very good. I also don't know why you don't put it higher because you're the Froslass person, which is what Munkidori is designed to work with. But it's very good in that you move damage counters. For decks that can utilize it, you have to be able to get the energy onto it, which is always the trick, right? So we've criticized that it's seen too much play at times, or where it gets played in decks where you can't get the energy onto it because you have to attach to your active to attack, and you never get the energy on the Munkidori. It's not very good. But if you can get the energy attached and you're getting damage in play, which either means you're using Froslass to get yourself damage, super good, because you're moving those 3 damage counters every turn, or however many you can, you might not get to 3 depending on how the game's flowing, but you're setting up, you're weakening, taking extra knockouts. and just making life tough for your opponent. The other thing is if you're not playing Froslass, you have to make sure your active Pokemon is not getting one shot, which and obviously there are these high HP Mega Pokemon, so it is a thing you can utilize. But again, you have to make sure energy in play, and you have to have damage you can move. And it just seems like too often players can't they're playing decks that don't allow them to get the energy attached, or they don't have damaged Pokemon, right? They assume they're going to have damaged Pokemon, but a lot of decks, you're just getting one shot. So that's the downside to it, which is why it's low for us, both of us, but it is very good, that ability.
Yeah, and I think a big reason why I'm actually almost a little higher on this card than I was pre-rotation is actually this happened with Arven as well. When Arven came out, there was the very powerful tool card for Sealstone, and for Sealstone was very good. I'm not going to sit here and deny that. However, people would really play Arven just for Sealstone, and then have like Arven with essentially with one tool, right? I didn't really like that. And so I didn't like Arven. And then when Force Stone rotated, I feel like people saw Arven more fairly, and then I got higher on Arven because of that, which is kind of what's happening with Munkidori. With Munkidori, your Gardevoir EX super powerful, right? And Munkidori, a nice piece within that deck. But people are like, saying it's like super broken, and then they're saying like, oh, it's so broken in everything, and then like I feel like people had this really warped perception of it. But now I think with Dragapult EX being so powerful, so prevalent. And that is a deck that isn't taking these big one shots, that is leaving damage guys on your board for the most part. Then Munkidori is nice against that. It works a lot better as this kind of countery Pokemon. Of course, just being like a counter Pokemon isn't super good. It's like fine, but it's not on this list just for that reason. But you mentioned Froslass. It is good with Froslass. I think Froslass is super good. I think Froslass, you did Froslass before you Munkidori. I was just saying there are like these conditions for it. And then also I will say I don't think I guess it's like good-ish with Megapsol, but I mean Megapsol isn't super good. And also, it's not like this super powerful combo because you like need a bunch of energy. You do some like weird stuff. It can be really fun. It can be really powerful, but also it's kind of weird. But and I don't see it that much. I see it some, and usually when I see it, it goes real bad for the person using it. So, which is usually my opponent, as I said. But yeah, it allows you to heal and do some damage, which is nice. And I think a big thing here is that, as I said, with a bunch of these, I've been playing slower decks, I've been playing faster decks. Munkidori really works with slower decks. With Dragapult against Dragapult. In terms of the energy, it's kind of clunky without like luminous energy. That kind of sucks. It's not the end of the world. I've actually been playing a lot of Energy Search and Night Stretcher to kind of make up for that. But ultimately, it can be really nice. And we'll talk about Froslass in just a second. I think that's the last card here. Yeah. But Munkidori can be really good.
And
but it can also be not so good.
Yeah, and probably Budew, with these Dragapult decks and such, makes for slower game developing, which means you have more likely a turn to get that energy attached to Munkidori at times when you wouldn't have in the past too. So it's another way to get Munkidori up and running as well, I think.
Yeah. Also, Munkidori can be good against Budew. It can be kind of weird, but it can be good. It can do it can do a lot of different things. I've been actually seeing Mind Bend and using Mind Bend a lot more than I was expecting. But yeah, I mean, definitely a pretty versatile card and can be really nice there. Then we have the final card here, or final two cards here, which this one is legitimately, this one is two cards, which is Froslass and Mega Froslass EX. So actually, I want to hear your thoughts on this first, and then I'll explain why I got it here.
All right, and I've been running into a decent amount of Froslass Munkidori decks, and they do play the Mega Froslass. And look, Munkidori Froslass is annoying. I will say the decks I've been playing, like if I'm playing my Ogerpon deck, yes, I'm getting damage, but the HP is such that it's okay. And ultimately, I'm just beating through their Pokemon and just winning the game anyway. So it's not too disruptive for the decks I've been playing. But it depends what you're playing, obviously, because you can one-shot the Budew if you have low HP Pokemon with abilities like Lunatone. Then it's a concern there as well. But the higher HP Pokemon, usually it's not a problem there. So I haven't been overly concerned about the Froslass Munkidori aspect. What I will say though is the Mega Froslass is very good at times. So which I'm not surprised by that. But he almost never uses the second attack. But the first attack does pretty big damage. A lot. It can one shot, other megas and stuff frequently. So you have to kind of keep an eye on that. So it is very good. Right now, I'm down on the deck because I think the last game I played in live, my opponent like went through a big last turn where they did all this damage, moved stuff around, and we're like 20 short on all my Pokemon to win the game, and they just take concede after they attacked, and I was like, thanks a lot. So, but it's good. I think the Mega Froslass is better than I thought. I think the Frost Moth right now, I'm not as high on that. That's my thoughts right now.
Yeah, in some ways I kind of agree with that. I think Mega Froslass EX can be so big. I mean, you can as you're saying, one-shot megas. One-shotting megas is really impressive, and it does it so easily. If your opponent lets you do it, but some ways you can just like Budew them a bunch or something. And it's really good. And so having that as an option is really powerful. And then Froslass, this is a like kind of the slow card in the game, right? You sit behind Budew, probably you Froslass a bunch, and hopefully you're gonna be able to. Hopefully for you, you're gonna be able to slow him down a bunch. Yeah, build up damage and win that way. And I actually think this works quite well with Dragapult EX as well. This is the deck I've been playing recently, which is Dragapult Froslass, which runs Mega Froslass. Actually runs one Mega Froslass as like a pretty meaningful attacker, and one Dragapult EX is also a pretty meaningful attacker. So the way it plays is definitely really interesting. The deck felt really good to me, and has really stood out as honestly just quite versatile. With Mega Froslass being this Pokemon you can lean into more if you need to go fast. And the regular Froslass being this card that is, a slower card that can be, really let you get value from just kind of staying, in the game, slowing things down, and just kind of, letting things go that way. So I don't know, I feel like it's, the two of them together are just super nice. Obviously, they are two different cards, so you kind of need to find them. It takes up more deck space, but I do think it is really nice with them. Obviously, you got like Munkidori there, and you have, I think like the regular Froslass, Munkidori, and Budew is just a combo that a lot of decks kind of sometimes they can deal with, but sometimes they just can't really deal with it, which is really, really good, right? For you.
Yeah, look, it's a deck I'm seeing a lot more than I would have expected, and it's interesting because it's a little different play style than a lot of decks. So I'm surprised to see it as much played as I am, honestly. But I think it's good for the game having it there. And it's just you'd have to. Certain types of decks are fine with it and don't care, but then the other decks are really going to struggle by that. So it's good for the game that it's there. I haven't played it a lot, so I got to do that. But yeah, I think putting Froslass, like I said, it wasn't really a consideration for me. It'd probably be a top 20 card. But the Froslass and the Mega Froslass, like you said, they're different cards. So yes, the same evolution line, but not the same thing as like the stage 2 with the stage 1. So I don't think you'd have Froslass here if you didn't have the Mega Froslass, right, in the game.
Yeah, I will also mention a couple of things. One, playing IRL, this card is like super annoying. It's like so annoying to keep track of. It's a little annoying live. It's also, especially if one plays Battle Cage, the animation still plays. So yeah, that's exciting. But it puts it like goes through each of their Pokemon and puts the I don't know, it like shows the animation of the not working for like each of their Pokemon. So that's something.
Okay.
But yeah, IRL it's like kind of annoying to keep track of. But anyways, then also this card was like hyped up with Mega Starmie, which is like a cool new deck. I think it's okay, but it's like not super good, right? I was like for so long I was like, yeah, Mega Starmie, it's like almost as good as Dragapult. Like Dragapult is really good, and this is almost as good as it. And I'm like, wait, okay, why don't I just play Dragapult with Froslass? And yes, it damages your Drakkloaks, which can be bad, but it's really good. It can be like legitimately super powerful. So yeah.
Yeah, and like you found out, the Mega Froslass is a very good attacker. So
Yeah.
so why would you play a Mega Starmie when you can just slap in the Mega from the same evolution line, and it just makes life simpler? I would say.
Yeah. And relying on like regular spread with it can be countered. The Shaman is a little like not as good as Dragapult. Yes, it gets kind of countered by or very countered by Battle Cage. There is some kind of play with the Chiyu, which I've been playing, which is like a funny card. But ultimately, I think this card, this is probably like the most out there one. I think a lot of these are pretty fair, pretty like I don't know, definitely really interesting discussion here. I think we agreed on a lot of things except for the Dragapult um, line and Meowth EX, obviously, really reflecting our different playstyles here. But ultimately, I think this was a really interesting discussion. Diving into these cards and definitely seeing like the different playstyles kind of emerging through these cards. Obviously, you have lots of other cards in those decks. You have trainers you can use to like analyze it. You could analyze them in attackers in like say Mega Lucario or even like Genghis EX, Raging Bull EX, but definitely I think the point of the game is that the state of the game is actually pretty good as well. It's not like perfect. I've heard a lot of people complain about it, but I think it's pretty decent. Um, and the Pokemon feel pretty cool.
Yeah, I think there's a good number of solid, legitimate decks you can choose from, which is good. They're very different play styles, like Dragapult to Froslass to Lucario. The concern is if all you run into is Dragapult mirrors all the time, which can be a thing. That's the bad side. But otherwise, there's a good set of cards here. I like where the game is post rotation. So and obviously it's nice post. It changes the game a lot. So we're still figuring things out. But I think the game's in a good place right now.
Yeah, and like you can make comebacks, and I think there are different things. I think a lot of people are kind of like scared about unfair stamp and encounter catcher, but it changes the game. It like changes the game, and it's something to get used to. Same thing like with Meowth EX, we're still getting used to that card. But anyways, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section on if there's any Pokemon here you'd rank differently, or any Pokemon you think we completely missed or super overrated. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section on YouTube, on Chills, Uncommon Fossil, and 10 Types. But you can also listen to us on podcasting platforms. But if you are watching on YouTube, or even if you're not, we'd really appreciate if you liked our videos and subscribed. It really helps us out and is free to do. We hope you enjoyed, and as always, we're excited to see you in the next episode.
Take care.